Hey guys, what's up? Alright, it's Double Deuce back. Today we're going to do kind of a special video that I've been wanting to do for a long time. And we're going to focus on this. If anybody knows what these are your old Blazing Blazer and very early Hilux lockout hubs and spindle and everything else. Now there's a lot of important things that go along with this video, so pay attention, and if you're not going to pay attention, watch it later. Now all through the years, this has been the most iconic truck ever, and you know, I did a web search on this thing. Nobody will admit it because it was very pricey, and the reason why it was pricey was because there was so much engineering that went into this truck. Now, so I laid everything out so you can see just how complicated this is and just how much they've refined it through the years. Okay, so we're going to start with the front lockout hub. Now I'm going to use a pointer here, and I'm going to do some zooming, and hopefully it'll help you guys understand the hub itself. Now, if you see in the picture, I got the hub, all the internals to the cap, okay, and you can see it's all built here. This one's not together, it's apart for a reason, and I'll show you. Put that out of the way. So here's the deal. The difference between the Blazing Blazer and the Hilux to the Bruiser and the HGP 407 is drastic. And I'll tell you why. Okay, this was your first axle shaft here. Okay, you see there's no threads on the end of this. Let's get a focus here whatsoever. There's an E-clip that goes on there, and there's an E-clip that goes on here. Okay, so what this does is it goes through this hub, and you got your 5x8 bearing here, you know, and same as the other standardized bearings in the truck throughout the years. The difference on the hubs, the lockout hubs, there were the one-way bearing roller pins, which there's 4 of them that go inside. Let me zoom in on this a little closer so you guys can actually see what's really happening here. As close as I can get. Okay, these 4 roller bearings, as they would call them, there goes into this hub. Now the hub itself has, you can see there, it's not perfectly round in there. It's got little locks kind of molded into it here for the bearings to set in. Okay, once you put the bearings in there, you put your axle shaft through first, put your bearings in, then there's a washer that goes over top of this, then there's a E-clip that locks it in. Okay, now your one-way hub is put together. Now the lockout hub itself has, excuse my reach here for a second, I'm going to grab a pair of pliers here so I can pick this up and show you guys. This here is your mechanism that locks it together. This is a D-shaped bearing. You can see it's flat on one side here, and the reason being it goes inside this hub, your lockout hub here. On the back side, you'll be able to see right there, there's a tiny little flat spot. Get a focus on this thing. Inside the hub itself. See the little flat spot in there? Right there. That's what that D-shaped washer sits against. Okay. Then this spring slides over the axle shaft here, like so. When it's all together, it slides over the cone here, this washer goes on, then this tiny little E-clip locks it all together. So when you pull the hub out, the spring tension holds it together and holds it back against the hub. Now there's two positions on this hub. There's a deep position here, then there's a shallower one here. So when this is locked in, it's like that. When you unlock the hub, you pull it and you turn it, and it does that. Now you have a space in between there, which unlocks the hub. What that does is it takes this, which is inside the back of this hub here, and pulls it off this tiny little flat spot that's in the or in the shaft itself. It pulls it off that and keeps it away from it, which it's unlocked and freewheeling now. Now why they put in these two, I have no clue. Because this basically, the hub actually basically locks it to the shaft. Maybe they put them in there for just extra support. The problem is these things are so old now. This was introduced in 1981. Okay, now that was a long time ago, and so all through the years, I bought these axles used on eBay. Okay, and the hubs themselves, and you know, of course, they advertise them as great working condition. Well, they're not. Okay. For one, if you can find a set of these that aren't totally abused, because everything is so fine here, and everybody, first thing they do is take these out and run them through the water and the mud, because they are waterproof. And all that silt got inside of everything in here and totally ruined this thing. And I'll show you. It got so bad that when I was, this is your spindle, okay, from the Blazing Blazer in the Hilux, early Hilux. Now your bearing sets around that to give it support. Well, when I took it apart, this is what happened. The cone was broken right off the hub itself, because it was actually welded. The bearing inner race was welded right to that. So you're not getting a great deal sometimes when you think you're getting a great deal. So there's some differences in these spindles too. Okay, now these spindles, I want to pull them up with the pliers because everything is so small and I got gigantic sausage fingers. Okay, here's the deal with the spindles. All right, for one, they didn't steer like the Bruiser does and the HGP 407. They don't have the bracket on the back of these to steer. Okay, what steered these was just another shaft up front here that steered them. Now, one thing I'm going to do for a comparison, okay, I'm going to hold, this is the Tamiya Bruiser axle, all right, and here's your Hilux Blazing Blazer axle, or hub, I'm sorry. I'm going to slide this over this, and I want you to see the difference between the holes. You see the difference between the holes and the length? They're totally different from the Bruiser themselves. And I believe the reason they did that was because they went from a 1.9 wheel to a 2.2. Now, if you see this here, these are tiny little 2mm grub screws that go in these here, and these are 3mm in the Bruiser and the HGP 407. Okay, now you can see here's the steering arm on here, which like I say, the Hilux and the Blazing Blazer don't have. Now, another, you can actually use this beefed up spindle with these hubs, because everything else is the same except for the arm itself and the bracket that goes on it for where it steers. So if you wanted to upgrade your Bruiser or HGP 407 to a locking hub mechanism from the earlier, Blazer and the Hilux, you can do it if you want to. The problem is they those earlier trucks had a 1.9 wheel, and it was very, very light, and it wasn't made for a gigantic, heavy Bruiser or HGP 407 rim. This here is basically all you're going to be able to run with it. This here was a rim I 3D printed off just for the video here, because I wanted to go over the bolt sizes too, because those are different. Now, here's your hubs through the years, okay? Your lockout hub for your Blazing Blazer and Hilux, your Bruiser hub, okay? Now, I don't have the one-way bearing one on here because they did make one for that, and the bearings are 4 times bigger than these that go in them, and because of the wheel and the abuse. And this is your HGP 407 hub. Now, the bolt pattern for the wheel on the Bruiser and the HGP 407 are the same. The bolt pattern for the Hilux and the Blazing Blazer isn't as wide. It's a smaller circle. So when you compare these things, I'll set this one right on top of this one, you'll be able to see how much smaller the bolt pattern is. It's a good 1/8 of an inch tighter in the 360 circle. So you're not going to be able to put your HGP 407 rims and tires or your Bruiser rims and tires back on these earlier hubs because they weren't meant for it. And to my knowledge, they only make one wheel for the earlier Hilux and the Blazer, and that's what it looks like. It's they make aluminum ones, and they make you know, the plastic printed off ones if you want, and then they have the original 2-piece aluminum ones. Now, it's a good deal for the aluminum ones. There's a guy in Hong Kong that sells them for I think they're like $50 for the set of 4 1.9 wheels. Now, another thing I wanted to get to, the center of this hub, okay, on the earlier ones is huge. As you can see, there's no way that this thing is going to fit into a Bruiser rim because the circle's bigger. So you have to remount the wheel to even get them in if you want to put them in. And if you want to put your Bruiser wheels on there, you're going to have to re-drill the holes in the rim, which is virtually impossible because they already got the holes pre-drilled. And then they have a hub center in there, and it's just no way you're going to have it. This one here, same thing. The way they got it set up is there's no way you can drill a smaller bolt pattern into this rim. So now, those are the front ones. All right, now I'm going to get to the back ones. Now the back ones are virtually exactly the same hub and lockout hub. Okay, they interchange front and rear. They got the same washer in them too, front and rear, the little D-shaped washer here. And the difference is, on the back they have a spacer, all right, little metal spacer there, and then they have the little E-clip that ties it together. So when you put the backs together, you put them together not in the unlock position like this, you put them together in the lock position like that, and you slide your spacer in there and put your little E-clip on there, and then you can put your cap, which these here are plastic, with 2 tiny little, I don't know, whether they're 1.5 millimeter, whatever they are, 2 little screws that hold the cap on. And the cap is basically what you grab with your fingers to pull out and lock it in. So now, like I say, getting back to the hub size, if you want adapters, the adapters will not fit the earlier Hilux and Blazing Blazer. They will fit this, and they will fit that, which is HGP 407 and Bruiser, but they will not fit here so don't waste your money, okay? Now, let's see, the front axle housing and inner shaft and gears are virtually exactly the same through the years, okay? The rear axle housing is different the axle housing itself is the same. However, the axle shaft inside is different because it has the small flat spot locked in there for your washer, and it's got, instead of threads on the end, it has an E-clip. And here's your Bruiser. Okay, now if you notice, the flat spot is bigger on this here because it's running a 2.2 wheel now instead of a 1.9, and the end is threaded for a 3mm lock screw. And so the problem is, when I bought this, like I said, everything was supposed to be in super great condition. First thing I noticed, the guy mentioned that the axle was hard to turn over. He said the grease was stiff over the years, which is okay. I believe that because a lot happens to the trannies. They turn to glue. I got this thing. First thing I noticed on it was, I don't know if you can see this here. Try to get it at a right angle. This thing here is bent. The whole housing comes up and does a big smile. So this thing went through some hellacious jumps or got stepped on or dropped or something over the years. So the axle shaft is okay. It's the housing that's bent and it binds it. So this was basically a waste of what I spent on this axle, because now I got to buy housing. And then I found out that the rear hub was stripped out too on the thing inside. And if you can see, inside there, it is basically flattened right out. So there's nothing. This thing is virtually useless to do any kind of running unless you got a shelf queen. And so I emailed the guy and he said, oh yeah, I might be getting another one. Well, that other one I went right on eBay and bought. Okay, and because I know what the guy was going to do, he was going to buy this one that was on eBay, turn around, switch out the hub with me, and then resell this one, because these things are harder to find than hen's teeth. So beat you to the draw, buddy. Sorry. Now, when you're putting all these things together and everything, everybody packs these things with grease, okay? Packing them with grease doesn't do nothing, because when the ring and pinion turn in there, it makes its own little area, so whatever grease is on the ring and pinion stays there. A little gets thrown off, and all the rest of the grease you packed in there virtually does nothing but maybe seal up the housing, okay? And if you're going to run them in water and stuff like that, then you can do that, okay? Just, make sure you pack your axle shafts with grease, okay? And just on the edge of the bearings where the axle meets inside here to keep the water out. Now, I don't really run mine in super wet conditions or anything like that. Excuse me. So, for even inside my transmission and my rear ends, I use this right here. It's associated, shock oils, 50 weight silicone shock oils, number 5412. Now, this is really old. You see, it's $1.25. I bought this about probably 20 years ago. And, but I still use this. You can see how much I have used in here. It's very little, because I coat the gears with it, and it's a silicone-based oil, which is very slippery, and it works very well in your HDP 407 transmission and your old Bruiser transmission. The grease gets in the way of your slide dogs going back and forth when you're trying to shift them. So this here's a super light slippery oil, and it works great. So that's my video for today. Any questions or comments or whatever, feel free to ask me and I'll look into it. And there's some other followers out there who are really into this kind of stuff, and I figured I'd give you the opportunity to look to see how it worked and what its limitations are. Now, you say you can make adapters and stuff to run your 2.2 wheels, or buy an aftermarket wheel that you might be able to fit these on, but you're basically stuck with the 1.9 factory wheel from Tamiya. For some reason, they have done that through the years. Right from day one, they have a goofy bolt pattern or a goofy adapter for their wheels, and it was extremely hard, especially for these trucks here, to go with an aftermarket style wheel. And And I don't think they did it for a reason. I just think they did it because it worked for their, you know, their application. So anyways, guys, like, share, subscribe. You know, tell your friends if you know, if anybody has one of these or something like that, you know, point out the video to them. And because I searched for hours and hours and hours, not finding anything about these things. The only thing I found on these was a couple of photographs, and from those photographs, I had to turn around and say to myself, all right, well, you know, I didn't own these things until last week. I bought them last week. And, you know, which I try to come up with unique things for the videos and stuff. And it gets expensive because I don't get paid for my videos. So this is all basically a learning process for me to pass it on. You know, I've been in this hobby for, you know, over 40 years, you know. And you guys now entering the hobby, you know, there's no information out there on any kind of schooling for how things worked back in the old days. And if I can pass it on and somebody uses the info, it makes me feel good. That way my life was not a waste. So, anyways, guys, Denny, I'm going to sign off. Have yourself a good one. Adios.